What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Rakaba18. Today I'm bringing you another video in which we're going to walk through our next build guide. This one is for the Fire Sorcerer. To be our third class for this season. We're going to go ahead and jump right in to the talent tree here. I'm going to show you guys and girls the gear selections and options for masterworking. And then we're going to dive into the Paragon board. So let's dive right in. First things first, this build is centered around fire and unlimited fire, where we're doing more damage for free over time off of free procs and off of a variety of different things that you'll see kind of come together within the build later on. The point of this build mostly is to cause fire out in the world that is over time and then do more direct damage that is bouncing all over the place. So essentially we're going to go 5 out of 5 on Firebolt there. We're going to go enhanced to pierce through enemies, which is super helpful and important later in the build, and I'll explain why. Then we're going to go Firebolt increases the burning damage you deal to an enemy. Now, we're going to be casting Firebolt quite a bit in this build, so basically this one is going to not only pierce everything, it becomes sort of like a, the way to think of it is becomes like a chain lightning, but for fire. And then you're going to do more damage because they're going to be on fire over time. Now, we're going to go 1 out of 5 on Fireball here, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. We're going to go 5 out of 5 on Flame Shield for our shield. We're going to go Enhanced. And then we're going to go Flame Shield heals you for part of your missing life. Give you a little bit of survivability there, which will come in handy with this next one. We're going to go 3 out of 3 for Glass Cannon. Now, anytime you can increase those ranks, that's going to be one of your targets. Anytime you can get extra ranks on Glass Cannon, you're doing it right. That's one of our best passives right there. We're skipping all of these passives up here, by the way. Then we're going to come down and get 1 on Frost Nova. This is mostly just to freeze and give yourself a little bit of space. We're not going with any of the enhanced spots or anything like that. Then come down and grab Precision for extra lucky hit chance, which is one of our most important stats with this build for reasons that I'll explain later. Now, Hydra is our main sort of like cooldown with, or becomes our like main mana spend at first. And we're going to go 5 out of 5 there. We're going to go Enhanced for healthy Hydras. And then, because it's also, anytime you are healthy, you're going to gain an extra Hydra head there. And then Summoned Hydra also burns enemies over time, which is going to come in handy here in just a few minutes. Then we're going to come down and get some passives. Inner Flame, 3 out of 3 for increased damage while healthy. Should be almost always with this build. And then Devouring Blaze, we're going to get some extra ranks on that through some gear. I'll talk about that in a minute, which will increase our crit strike chance and damage, or crit strike damage against enemies that are burning. It also increases by 30% if you are crowd controlling them, which also should be, almost everything is going to be crowd controlled to some degree or another with this build and with most builds this season, so that's going to be helpful. Crippling Flames to give a chance to stun or immobilize doubled when healthy. Then we're going to go into our second mana spender. This is going to be Firewall. We're going to get a lot of these for free, but we're going to have it on our board just in case. And we're going to spend a lot of money and mana on these. 5 out of 5 there, down to Enhanced. Give us extra damage while standing in the Firewall. And then we're going to get extra burn after they leave the Firewall. So essentially, this is going to become our main spender, and we're going to be mostly spamming Firebolt. And then when we have full mana, we're going to go Hydra and Firewall until we're out of mana, and then recycle. And then anytime you have your ult up, you're going to use it, which is Inferno. We're going over to Prime, pulls enemies in, which is a form of crowd control to some degree, and can also stun them. When Inferno is active, your skills cost no mana. So this is gonna be something every time this is available, you're gonna use it, and then build up your mana, spend it all the way down, build up your mana, spend it all the way down, and then cycle through. We're going to go 1 out of 3 for Fiery Surge. We're going to go 3 out of 3 for Soulfire, 3 out of 3 for Endless Pyre, and 3 out of 3 for Warmth. All of the fire passives. You only need 1 here, just because mana regen is not that important. We're just getting that to get to these. These are going to give us extra mana cost reductions and damage. This one's going to give us heals and heals over time. And then this one is going to increase our damage for each second they are burning. So we're going to gain a little bit of boost to our damage there. Then you can make the case for either of the fire passives here, but we're going to go burning effects deal increase more damage and an additional 2% per unique source. You're going to get a lot of different sources of extra burn, and that's going to then increase our damage. Now, we're not really going with a crit strike build here. There is a lot of crit strikes. Those are like the heavy hitter builds that are more focused on like meteor and things like that. This is more of a damage over time, and then so many sources of it that they instantly, etc. So then we're gonna, so you can kind of see we got Firebolt and then our 2 mana spenders, which are in Firewall and Hydra. We got our Alt Inferno, and then our 2 forms of defensive abilities in Frost Nova and Flame Shield. Right here, our Fireball, that's the reason we got 1, so that anytime they are removed, they get they explode for 50% of the damage. And then this is going to give us a bunch of free firewalls. So essentially, a lot of the time, you're going to want to use Hydra first as your mana spender, and then use Firewall second, because you're going to get a bunch of free firewalls with this build. So the 3 most important skills here are then Firebolt in order, and then Hydra, and then Flame Wall. Because Hydra is going to where you're going to pump most of your damage out, and then when you have enough of them out, then you can go into Firewall. But you should start to get a bunch of free firewalls there. All right, now let's talk about our gear. Our gear is going to be a little bit different this season because of the masterworking and the tempering that exists. So we're going to go, first of all, Aspect of Might, so we get a little bit of damage reduction. We're going to be casting almost 85% of the time, we're going to be casting Fireball or Firebolt, so we're going to get a lot of damage reduction that's almost always up from that one. We're going to go to Hectic, which is after casting 5 basic spells, one of your cooldowns is reduced by 1 second or 0.9 seconds. You should get a lot of free cooldown reductions here because of that, because you're going to be spamming Firebolt quite a bit here. Now, this is where one of the centerpieces comes in. This is all like coming together towards this particular item. This is new this season, and it's called Flame Weaver, where you will then be able to, every time you cast it, it will go, if it goes through a free firewall, it can split into 3 and deal additional damage. So the more that you spam it, the more firewalls you're going to see, and then the result is that it splits into more of them, and then it cascades. So that's why this is sort of an unlimited mana build here, or an unlimited fire build, because you are spawning free firewalls, casting essentially free damage through them that's chaining to everything else, and then it cascades on top of itself, and then you're also going to be getting combustions, and you're going to be getting ultimate in there, and your hydras are going to be doing damage too. So it all kind of comes together through that particular item, which gives you also a bunch of really great bonuses here. Flame Shield will let you move unhindered. This is really good for like becoming, with Flicker Step, becoming able to move without being crowd controlled, which really comes into handy later in the game. While you are enemies that you move through while Flame Shield are active become immobilized, which is a form of crowd control, which triggers some of the effects that we saw in our talent tree there. Flicker Step is probably still one of the best in slots. There's a couple of items that you can make a case for in certain circumstances, but here, when we evade through, we're reducing the cooldown of our ultimate, and the ultimate is going to do more damage. So here we're going to go with Aspect of the Moonrise, which gives you attack speed, and then upon a certain percentage, you're getting basic skill damage and movement speed, which is most of our like cast damage is going to come from our basic skills, so that allows you to use them more often, gain then more mana, and then you're sort of cascading again, furthering the usefulness of your basic ability, and then everything that cascades down from that. X-Falls is another centerpiece. This is one of only 3 uniques that we're going to use here until you get into the uber uniques. This is basically anytime your damage effects deal damage, they have a chance to erupt, dealing additional damage to all surrounding enemies. As you might imagine, that extra lucky hit there as well, and you get a lot of damage over time. You're going to gain a lot of extra free explosions there. And then we're going to go basic skill attack speed, so that you're able to cast your basic skill and chain it to others, and then spawn more free firewalls over and over and over again. Here we're going to go Edgemaster's Aspect. So, excuse me. This is going to allow us to do more damage based on how much primary resource we have. So this is when you cast Hydra, and when you cast Firewall, it's going to do more damage because you're already built up your mana as high as possible. Then here, we're going to go Aspect of Inner Calm, which deals more damage based on how long you've stood still. And a lot of times you're going to be standing still very close to enemies. They're going to be kind of centered on in you, but you're going to be standing still, casting a lot of free fireballs here. You're going to gain damage from that as well. All right, last but not certainly least is our Paragon board. So let's run through this very quickly here. We're going to obviously start the same way we do with everything. We're grabbing all of these extra rare nodes through here for extra max life and non-physical damage, some resistances. Then we're going to come up and grab our first glyph, which is going to be territorial. Now, I've done a lot of like min-maxing on this, and a lot of these can be kind of interchangeable. Some of them, there's a way in which I've chosen ones that are going to give you the most damage, but they're like plus or minus 1 or 2%. So if you want to choose one in a different spot, it's really not going to hurt you that much. So we're going to go territorial and gain 72% or 77% damage to close. And equally important, you're going to gain damage reduction, which is one of the most important stats this season, simply because armor is capped and there's a certain point where resistances no longer benefit you. So the more damage reduction you can add on top of that, it's all good and all gravy there. We're going to grab our elemental balance for non-physical damage. We're going to grab the resistances here. And then this one calls for dexterity, which is also going to give us some crit. So we're going to grab all the extra dexterity that we can here in range. Then we're going to come up to our second Paragon board and go with legendary node Searing Heat first. Now again, these are kind of interchangeable, so you can move boards around if you want to. But Searing Heat is our first one. Pyromancy skills, which is all fire skills, grant 12% increased crit strength and deal increased direct damage equal to 10% of your damage over time fire bonus, up to 30%. So essentially, you're doing more fire damage, is the point there. We're grabbing Pyromancy and all of the surrounding nodes. We're skipping these potion heals. We're coming up and grabbing Combustion and all the surrounding nodes. We're grabbing Keeper of the Flame for damage reduction against burning enemies, which should be everything, and then all the surrounding nodes there. Come up to our second spot, which is Torch. 77.2 damage over time with fire, and you deal increased damage for 2% more, 2.5% more per nearby enemy that is burning, up to 12%. So the way to think of that is most of the time you're going to have a 12% uptime on the damage you're doing. Then we're going to grab Flame Touched and all the surrounding nodes. And we are then going to skip Ashes here because of the, it's essentially just more fire resistance. And I don't really need that in this case. And it's not blocking anything that we need. So this one's going to call for willpower. So you're going to grab all the surrounding willpower nodes within range, max that out. And then we come over to our third board, which is Burning Instinct. Your burning damage is increased by 10% of your crit strike damage bonus. So this is why one of your important stats is crit strike. Now keep in mind that is not the only important stat here, but it is going to help you do more fire damage. So you're going to gain, and for every 25 intelligence you have, you're gaining a little bit more bonus there. So more fire damage, essentially, is what that is. We're grabbing Keeper of the Flame and all the surrounding nodes. We are going to skip Safeguard here because it's too expensive to get to. We're also skipping Color and all the surrounding nodes. We are then going to grab Kindling and all surrounding nodes on our way to Flame Feeder, which is going to be increased damage to burning enemies, 97% after max rank. You deal 10% increased direct damage. That means non-burning damage to those that are already burning. So if you're hitting them with something, that initial hit that then applies the burning damage, that initial hit is going to gain damage. It's not going to affect the ongoing flame damage, but the direct hit will in that particular case. We're going to grab Cinders for damage to burning. We're going to grab Smoldering and all the surrounding nodes. And then this one calls for dexterity as well. Excuse me. So make sure to grab all of the needed dexterity there to activate the bonuses. So then we're going to come down to our fourth and final board and the legendary node enhancement master, which is going to make all of our enchantments 20% stronger, which means when the fireball explodes and things die, it's going to do 20% more. and then you're going to see a better chance of free firewalls on the free firewalls are going to be stronger. We are going to skip these potion heals. We're going to skip damage reduction over time here, which is part of the reason we grabbed it before. We got a little bit, but it gets too expensive to grab all of them. We are going to grab Elementalist for the increased physical or non-physical damage and some max life. Grab all of these, the non-physical damage and intel there. We will also be able to grab Erudite, which is a resistance here. And we're going to skip everything else. Just grab the rest of the intel there for the non-physical damage on our fourth and final glyph, which is Enchanter, which gives you non-physical damage, which is all of our damage. For each skill equipped in your enchantment slots, gain 5% maximum resistance to that skill element. Just a little bit of extra free fire skill damage there, or resistance there, but the main reason you're doing it is for 129% non-physical damage. So we're going to then skip Ruinous and everything else on our way to our final enchantment there. So at the end of the day, with this particular build, you're going to end up with a lot of free fireballs that are going everywhere and then exploding everything else. You're going to end up with a bunch of free firewalls. You're going to end up with a bunch of hydras. And then when you need to and spend your mana, your hydras and your firewalls are going to do a lot more damage because they're doing more damage at max mana. You're going to drain that mana down, use your ultimate, then build it back up and drain it back down. All the while, you're getting a bunch of free unlimited fire everywhere. At the end of the day, basically everything burns in this. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the build and see you again for the next one, which will be a rogue build. Thank you so much again. See you soon.